dear ladies, gentlemen, and everyone in between. Welcome to a very special episode of The Sandbox. Tonight we will kick up some sand and dust in your ear canals. This is a sound you've never heard before, the sound of living. First things first, let me introduce you to the wonderful team members of Team Radio. Sitting on my right side here in the studio is the beautiful and athletic Paula, my co-host for tonight.
Oh, hello Ari, glad to be here.
Hi. Making sure we're not extending our stay here at Radio Centraal is Bulma, our very nice photographer and punctual time manager.
Hello.
And last but not least, we have dinosaur lover Ruben, who's in charge of our one-man technical crew.
Hello.
My name is Ari, and I promise you this show will give you the best eargasm you've ever had. Let's go.
Thank you Ari for your wonderful introduction once again. As you said, we are here in representation of the Sound of Living project, but people may wonder, what kind of magic is this? This, ladies and gentlemen, is good ethnographic stuff. We are students of KU Leuven, and we are doing a research seminar about creating creative livelihoods. This is how people make a living out of creativity in creative ways.
Oh, so like the people here at Radio Centraal.
Exactly, we're better than Radio Centraal to make this project. Since we've been here the past few weeks doing fieldwork...
Paula, what do you mean by doing fieldwork? Is it like archaeologists digging up rocks and polishing them?
No, Eddie, did you forget your major? Our participants are actually living people.
Oh, so you're digging up and polishing living people? That's a weird fetish you have there. I'm confused.
No, Ari, it's anthropology, not archaeology. What we do is talking to people and trying to understand the world through their eyes.
Oh, so that's why we're making radio, to get a better feel of the radio making process.
You got that.
I gotcha. But, Paula, could you help me refresh my memory? How did we end up at Radio Centraal again?
Yes, sir. Let me take you back to about 3 months ago, when 9 of us drew the sorter sticks and ended up in a group called Creative Livelihood.
Bloop, 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 bloop. Flashback sound.
There we were assigned to explore the way creative people define and make their livelihoods. We searched far along for everything we considered creative, from makerspace to hackerspace, until we ended up here at Radio Centraal, an independent community radio with a unique concept that seems to have proved that being non-commercial is not an obstacle to success.
Oh.
On the contrary, it has successfully accommodated at least 1,000 of creative people for the past 40 years. Radio Centraal is a haven to voice the sounds that otherwise remain unspoken and unheard of, and a perfect place to inspire and drive creative and unique livelihoods along the way. When we went here, we instantly fell in love, and we were intrigued to follow the content makers of Radio Centraal, and we want them to tell us the story of their creative livelihoods and how radio has had a central role on it.
Oh wow, we've really been putting in a lot of work, haven't we? But on a more serious note, we are really thankful to have a special guest with us tonight for the second episode of this series of profiles on creating creative livelihoods at Radio Centraal. Tonight's guest is Dennis Tyfus. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you.
So you brought some music for us to listen to,
A little
right?
bit, yeah. Ruben asked me in an email to bring some stuff that I relate to. I brought a few things, some on my own label, Ultra Eczema, and a few things that I purchased or traded recently that I enjoy listening to.
Okay, and the song you selected for us to hear, can you introduce it?
Yeah, I actually, in a way, thought when you guys contacted me that it was about the history of Centraal a little bit.
Okay.
Maybe
Yeah,
I'm wrong
sure.
or not.
No, we can talk about that.
No, it's not necessarily because I was not there from the beginning. But voorzitter, hoe vertaal je in het Engels? Chairman, maybe, yeah, or coordinator, more likely. The former chairman, Peter de Keuler. He used to have a radio show here together with his brother Johan de Keuler and Ann Wilkens called Kolunst, which was a kind of radical satire radio show which I very much enjoyed. They also made their own music for their show, and it's kind of made for a special, let's say, extreme radio theater. This is one of the songs. It's called Jouer Jouis. It's very long, so I'd say play only a part of it or something. So,
Okay, maybe.
Yeah.
So Can we hear now some of the music you wrote?
Bonjour, monsieur.
What is the maman?
Ma maman, je ne sais pas. Pourquoi ça?
Moet je misschien crème glacé of levers? Lolly!
Ah oui, je veux bien un lolly. J'aime bien ça. Jouer, 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 jouer ça. Pousser, pousser, pousser au paradis. Jouer, 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 jouer ça. Pousser, pousser, pousser au paradis. Jouer, 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 jouer ça. Pousser, pousser, pousser au paradis.
Je vrakken. Wat zit ik eigenlijk?
Moi, j'ai bien 9 ans.
Dan kun je wel optellen. En aftrekken. Ja. Heb je al ooit eens gehoord van kameren?
Jouer, 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 jouer ça. Pousser, pousser, pousser au paradis. Jouer, 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 jouer ça. Pousser, pousser, pousser au paradis.
Zeg. Kameren. Heb je daar al van gehoord?
Je ne sais pas, c'est quoi?
Chambrère. Chambrère.
Peut-être, je ne sais pas.
Come on. Let's party.
Jouer, 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 jouer ça. Pousser, pousser, pousser au paradis. Jouer, 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 jouer ça. Pousser, pousser, pousser au paradis. Je jouis, oui, oui, au paradis. Ton zizi, mon meilleur ami.
Dat is een lekker thuis, hè? Frak te wagen van al wat. Kom. Dat je blazen hoort. Nou, tutti quanti. Kom, let's party.
Jouer, 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 jouer ça. Pousser, pousser, pousser au paradis. Jouer, 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 jouer ça. Pousser, pousser, pousser au paradis. Touche mes petits seins. Quel merveilleux festin.
Zeg, je vrakken. Zal ik eens in een schoot schaten? Schat. Huh? Go, let's party.
Jouer, 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 jouer ça. Pousser, pousser, pousser au paradis. Jouer, 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 jouer ça. Pousser, pousser, pousser.
So, Dennis, you are a radio maker here at Radio Centraal, correct?
Somehow, yes.
Yeah, somehow. Can you tell us a bit more about your program here?
Yes. Yeah, I was just telling you when the music was playing, which of course the listener didn't hear. I was just saying how I find it strange. Well, to speak in English on this radio station is already funny for me, except for when I, of course, have guests that are speaking in that language. On the other hand, I also find it very strange to speak in the way I speak, my own normal tongue, let's say, because in my radio show, I always imitate. Well, it's not really imitating because they are also my voice, but I do, let's say, different voices that I communicate in. I do, for example, 3 characters now in a series of about a shop in that handles in joke articles, joke products.
Oh, it's like fictive.
It's
right?
fictive, yeah. It's completely fictive, but it's. So what I do there is talk in these 3 different voices, but I'm here alone, which I very much enjoy. There's no one else here, and I'm talking in 3 voices, and I play the music that I like. Let's say I don't ever announce the music, or very rarely. The radio show kind of evolved. In the beginning, it was a night radio show. I broadcasted from 12 till 2 at night, and back then I actually didn't say a word. I only played mostly harsh noise and noise records, things that I was fascinated or liked back then. Then it kind of evolved more and more to using my voice and also to play my own musical output or whatever. And then it became a show that kind of I thought like, well, it's such a part of my life in a way that like it's a sort of report of what I'm busy with. It can be like for a while and still I set up a lot of concerts and evenings. I also run a record label. So in a lot of ways, a lot of people from all over the planet, let's say, passed by and stayed with me, etc. And if they would happen to be around on a Saturday afternoon, I would take them to the show and interview them there. So it's very possible that I'm like right now doing a series about this ridiculous shop that doesn't exist. But it's very possible that there's someone visiting on Saturday and that I will just talk with him or her about their activities, and it's a serious or not that serious talk or interview, or I have these people play live, or I also had a series where I used to call up people and they would play music over the phone. It was also but this is really long ago. Yeah, this was kind of an ongoing project at some point. I just like it to be. I just like that the radio show kind of combines all my interests. It's possible that I'm in a very happy mood and then I would do the satirical play. Or it's also possible that I'm hungover and in a really bad mood and that I will just play music and don't say a word. Wow. Or it's always it just kind of depends on my mood. I see it. There's some people that say like, "Pooh, gee, you're doing it since such a long time. Aren't you sick of it, etc." And I actually don't think so. That I'm never getting sick of it because it gives me the chance to, in a way, reflect or be by myself to start with. In which I'm actually also in my own studio, of course, which is actually not so that doesn't make it so special.
But does it maybe feel like me time, like for you?
Me time? No, because I'm actually very much sharing what I'm doing there. It's like it's more like share. It's more like I mean, why do you can wonder why someone does that? Why is someone like babbling to himself every Saturday afternoon? It's a little bit silly. It has something very silly, but I like the silliness. I like the idea that what you're and I also very much I was very much fascinated and obsessed actually with Radio Centraal when I got to know it as a child actually. So.
As a child, I was gonna ask.
Well, early teenager. So as a 12, 13-year-old, I got to know it.
And did you then already think about I want to make a program on the radio one day?
I very, very much wanted to be part of it, but it was much more serious, I guess. Although what I do on Centraal was always inside of me, I guess. But like, that sounded very, very hippie in a way. But No, I was very obsessed with the music in the beginning. I was like, when I heard Centraal for the first time, so I never heard any music like it, and I wasn't even sure if it was music. I was very fascinated with it. I was like, what is this? This is more extreme than punk or whatever, which punk is something I liked as a child already and was very much into. So I noticed that it was something different and that there was a whole world behind it, and I also wanted to know everything about it. What I heard on Centraal back then was always it fascinated me, let's say.
Wow. And then how did you end up getting your own show? Did you audition? Like, did you go through the sandbox or?
No, it went differently. How did it go again? Yeah, well, the sandbox, I don't know if it existed at that moment. It existed in the past. Then it didn't exist for a while. Then I don't know how it went, but well, I ended up here. I every Friday went to this record store after school. To this record store that doesn't exist anymore, so I can actually say the name. It's called Metrofoon Popkelder. It was a record store at the Mer, the biggest shopping street here in Antwerp, and they had these lists of what was played in a certain radio show that was broadcast here every Saturday afternoon called the Elitaire 40. And the Elitaire 40 was a sort of top 40 that was put together by all the, or possibly by all the members that wanted to invest in it. Wait, I'm explaining it wrong. You could basically, as a radio host that does a show here, you could put together a list of your favorite new releases from that week. And that was put in a box here. I remember the box was standing here. It says Elitaire 40 box. You could put your list in it and a possible recording of it. And then they would make a top 40 of it. So in that way you would hear a lot of very strange music, but from in all very different styles. Yeah. Because a lot of people at Centraal are very specialized in what they're doing. There was a very deeply underground hip hop show, but there was a punk show as well. There was a lot of cassette culture shows, etc. So these things were all brought together in this Saturday afternoon show that took 2 hours, and they would have lists. These lists, and they would lay. You could take them away at that store. So I went there every Saturday to get one, and then I recognized the voice of the guy that did that show. And so I went up to him and I was asking him for more lists or something like that. And he was like looking at me like, this is such a snot nose, like I was 12 or 13 or whatever, and this man was 32. So he was kind of a bit arrogant to me. It was like they kind of mocked me a little bit, made fun of me a little bit. But then the week after, in the show, they said on the radio like, "Oh, if that snot nose that was in the record store last week is so interested in us, give us a ring." Give us a call. So I thought like, well, that must be me. That's how arrogant I was as well. So I called them up, and the guy was like, yeah, if you're very interested, why don't you come for a visit? And then I would come every Saturday from then on. But I was somehow very shy because I mean the guy was way older. They obviously knew a lot more about music than I did. So I would just be there, and in the end I started also bringing music and play some stuff sometimes. And that's kind of how I first ended up. Then the radio show was kind of taken off the air somehow because of problems with some people that were involved with it, I think. And then 2 years later I proposed my own show with another guy, Peter Verwimp. And we did a radio show, but we were fighting every time because we didn't get on at all. So that was not a really good show. And then I wanted my own show, and then I proposed my own show. And I was also immediately part of not immediately, but kind of didn't take long before I got involved with dagelijks bestuur, hoe zeg je dat in
the board?
The board, yeah. So, I very much also always liked the visual aspect of the radio, or the visual aspect that runs through this culture, let's say. So like self-made flyers, I always made drawings and stuff like that. So I kind of really wanted to take part in it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's kind of how I got here.
Oh, interesting.
That was a very long story. I'm sorry
nice
for,
to hear.
for a very unexciting end.
No.
Well, that's
It's
how I
very
got
nice
here.
to hear it.
Yeah.
And how have you seen the evolution of Radio Central through all this time? Because you started here quite early, and you have been involved with it a lot of years already. Have
Mhm.
you seen any change? Any?
Yeah, well, it's when I didn't know the radio yet, I would I was a young teenager, and I would listen at home, and I would hear all this really kind of like brutal stuff and discussions, and also a lot of outspokenly left politics, something I was also very interested in. There's way less news and politics, let's say, right now than it used to be, or that's how it feels. And actually, that already was the case when I joined.
Oh.
I mean, in the 80s it was like 50-50. So that's unthinkable now. I think the like people that became known national TV journalists like Jan Baljouw, Stefan Blommaert, Frits Robans for the VPRO, the Dutch radio and TV. They started here, and it was a very ambitious. They were very ambitious in their broadcasts, or in their purveying of news. Let's say so. They that's something that's kind of gone. There's a Redactietijd, the sort of news show on Saturday before my show on Saturday between 12 and 2. And there's a show called Webgang, which is about new all this ontwikkelingen, developments. Sorry, developments in the computer land. Let's say there's a new show, a biological news show called Oikos. That is quite funny actually and interesting. He also plays recycled music and stuff like that. It's very thematic. Yeah, it's quite nice. So there is stuff like that, but not like it used to be anymore. And also there used to be you know, things change also when you know something for a long time. When you know something quite well, the excitement also
That's true, yeah.
fades. But I'm still I still think it's there's some very interesting stuff happening here. And what I also think is very interesting about Centraal is that it's I think it will always is maybe a lot to say, but it was very smart that this building was bought at some point.
Oh,
Yeah.
This building was bought, and with that money and with the members fee, every member pays €7 a month to make the show. We don't have to broadcast commercials, which I think is absolute gold and very
Yeah.
important
Very
to
rare.
keep. Right? Yeah, I think it's still actually hardly exists in such a way. But also the whole thing is changing. There's also a lot of online radios which also don't broadcast commercials, and there's very specialized. So it's a very different situation than 20 years ago. Absolutely, yeah. Do I think it's good or bad? I don't know. It evolves and it changes, and I think it will keep changing. I was talking with somebody the other day. Probably the FM, how we know it now, will probably disappear, and it will.
Wow.
So it will change, and I'm very curious how Centraal will, what the voice of Centraal will be in this. But I think it will always be a place where experiments and things that don't happen elsewhere in radio land, let's say, will happen. Yeah.
Do you think like the fact that there are right now these online radios is making that here they are experimenting more? Like you said that before it had more kind of a political charge, political load in the radio contents, but now it's maybe more experimental, artistic things.
Maybe. I think it was also more a weapon back then. More I think beginning of the 80s. I mean, I was a toddler back then, of course. I didn't physically experience, or I didn't experience that time politically or whatever. But I think Centraal was used in a lot of ways as a weapon more, and also as for example, gay rights, etc. There was a gay radio show from the very beginning on, fighting for gay rights, etc. Which is, I mean, it's a lot different now. There's more acceptance to it, luckily, which I think Centraal played a very active role in here. So, same goes with. A very clear stand against sexism and racism, etc. It's what was your question again? Sorry.
No, I was wondering because right now it's not needed to have a weapon exactly here.
Well, but I think actually that's what I think is surprising because we are actually we have a let's say extreme right governments, so it's more than necessary to still. To be very vocal about this, I think. So, and I think Centraal still does play a role in it, but Centraal always depends on the ambition and the enthusiasm of its. The
content makers.
Of the people that do it. Yeah. I mean, in the beginning period when the news or that thing was like 50-50 with music and art. Those people were here every day. It was like their second home. They were just in the front room here, constantly writing, and they had a car with a phone in it back then, which was unseen. And they would broadcast from protests, etc. So this is times changed, and it's different. I don't know if that replies to your question though.
Yeah. Mostly it was about this changing of times.
Well, that's for sure. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Maybe we play some music?
Yeah.
A little musical intermezzo?
Yeah, I brought the CD here that I received today. I didn't hear it yet, but I'm a fan of the band. It's called Reynolds. It's an Argentinian band that existed between 93 and 2018. 2018. And they something special about them is that they had a Down syndrome drummer and main frontman, let's say. Yeah.
Interesting. Let's hear it. Well, that was interesting music. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not really signature track, let's say, because they can be it's very different. They can go from soundscapey stuff to very wild free jazz with vocals by this Down syndrome guy,
And
etc.
how did you find the band or the CD?
Yeah, it's I don't know. I don't remember. It's just out of interest and
okay.
like looking for. There's a lot of small distributors that carry this stuff. I know the guy that published it. It's a box set that compiles lots of unreleased work by them. So that's why I just received it today. It's interesting. Yeah.
Nice. Thank you for bringing it.
No worries.
Yeah, and we wanted to go a bit back to your radio program here in Radio Central because we are wondering what is meaning for you to make this kind of program and what do you want to achieve with it? What are the goals you set for yourself about the program?
It's funny because I had a conversation today with someone. So the radio exists since 40 years next year. And we're with a group of people busy with trying to make a book about it. We had this idea for 30 years Centraal, but it never happened. So
Now 40 years.
Now 40 years, it was maybe a good time, and we're talking to a lot of people that were there in the beginning days. So we're now talking to a lot of people from that were here from let's say 1980 until 87 or 88.
Oh, okay.
So I spoke to someone today, and he was talking a lot about how he stopped doing the radio show because he didn't feel like it was gonna get him anywhere or gonna get him to a next level or something.
Okay.
And I think I actually think in a lot of ways that what's happening here is not really possible on let's say national radio or whatever without or inbooting, without having to give in to what they to what a commercial radio wants to say. I also don't have any interest in that field.
You have no ambition to get to national
I don't know, or
radio,
at some point VPRO asked me to propose something, and I remember every 6 months or something said I will come up with a proposal soon, and I never did.
Oh.
So it's because the proposal would be I don't really wanna imprison myself in the idea that that sounds really pathetic, I know, but I don't wanna imprison myself in a way that I would have to do this as a job.
Okay,
I would have to be funny if I don't feel like it. I would have to be, because they expected some kind of what I do here, but with a concept or something. And I was like, well, the concept is exactly that I do whatever I want to do there, and that it can be a music show, but it can be a satirical show, it can be a noise show, it can be a gig, it can be anything. And I don't know if that whole thing would be possible there. And also I don't want to give this up at all. I actually could call it I hate the word hobby, because I don't think anything one does with a passion. Well, maybe of course there's hobby. I just don't like the word hobby, but maybe it's a hobby. So I don't know what it means to me. It's a I can really, really look forward to this moment every Saturday still, which I think is very I don't know. It's also a moment where I also, for example, buy records sometimes that I would not play at home, that I would just buy to play on the radio show because they fit a certain feeling of, or because they have this atmosphere. For example, a 70s end at the end of a TV show, this kind of heroic. You see someone waving at the sea, that kind of music. I would never listen to that or buy it, but I like that it fits to an atmosphere or a thing in a radio play or something.
Okay. Yeah, so at some point it's something that is playing a role in your life, a strong role in your life, and even when it's not What are you making for a living? Like,
No, the opposite actually.
Yeah.
Um, Well, making a living, yeah, this is always funny. You always have to. I have the feeling that like I'm trying to. What I make a living with is, for example, I would do tattoos, no choice tattoos. It's something I like doing, but it's also not something I want to do every day. I don't want to hang over someone's body every day. That's really. That sounds depressing to do that every day. But I like that pays for my other days,
okay.
for example.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Or that can pay for example, building big installations or something, or making a film with someone that costs money to make. You know, like I don't really want to think in. I mean, one has to survive, obviously. But yeah, I mean. This would be a completely different station if everybody would get paid here. It's an unthinkable,
Yeah.
strange. I mean, or maybe it's not unthinkable, but I never thought of it that way. That it could be. I like the idea that we're commercial free, and that I also think, for example, in the city, in the urban landscape, or next to the highway or whatever. I also don't think there should be commercials there. I think it would be way funnier if that's replaced by art pieces, for example, or
that's
photos or
interesting.
whatever.
Yeah.
So I don't. Yeah, no, I don't know. Yeah, but there's different opinion. Or there's different. It's possible that I would listen to myself saying this the next day, and I would be like, yeah, but maybe you can also look at it the other way, and I don't. I can have 5 opinions about this probably. I don't know.
So could you explain a bit more what you do outside of Radio Centraal? How would you describe is your profession? Are you an artist or?
I don't like to. Yeah, it's also very childish, but I don't really like that. That it's that you would be able. Well, you are able, of course, but like that you're. I don't want to invite you to put me in a little box.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I am all of these things, or I like doing all of these things. I like doing a radio show. I like tattooing. I like making installations. I like painting. I like drawing. I like making music or whatever. It's if you don't want to call it music, it's also fine. It's all stuff that I like doing, and I don't really find it necessary to label myself as an artist. But if people want to call me that, that's fine too.
Do I interpret it right? If, like, for example, when you talk about tattooing, you do it also because you like it, but then also you gain money so you can do something else you
Yeah,
like.
that's
Like
exactly what I. Yeah, that's what I
installation,
meant.
that's
Yeah.
how you make
Yeah.
a livelihood. It's not a
In a way,
profession,
yeah.
it's just a way
Oh.
for you to do other things you like, maybe.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Well, there's always these little things that pay for the big things, because the big things cost a lot of money, and I can't afford them otherwise. So that's exactly.
You need to get money somewhere.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, and actually, it's there's also the record label, which I forgot to to mention. So I also publish records, but that's a VZW. What do you call that in English?
Non-profit?
Non-profit organization. So if I sell a record, the money stays in the organization, and it's possible to make more records with that money, which I greedily do. Let's say I'm I very much like music, records, publications, stuff like that. So I'm always kind of eager to and looking for.
So you work
small
together
publications.
with artists?
Yeah,
or?
yeah.
Okay.
With a lot of different musicians and artists from everywhere. A kind of condition became that I need to know the person. I used to not think that, but like I met a few artists which I published records by, which I absolutely didn't like, and I was like, why did I do this? So it's kind of a condition now. I at some point around 2004 or 5, I was very much into. Yeah, there was really a big wave of strange music happening, and I would publish stuff that enthused me, let's say. But I think there's more there's more need. No, I need something else than only that or something. Yeah, I need maybe a personal relationship, and also Yeah, it's interesting how an artist can really get a lot more interesting when you know his work, when you know the person behind the work,
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
and when that's real or not. Because everybody can be an artist, really. That's not a problem. And especially with pages like Instagram or Facebook or whatever, people can put a photo of. I mean, it's everybody can have the luck of making one good piece, and like what's. It's interesting what's behind that, or it's interesting to see who's behind that, and if it's an honest thing. Well, maybe that's also bullshit. So I don't know.
So what does
No, I
it
don't.
m-
I'm sorry.
What will it make it honest? Like for
Yeah,
you?
that's a very good, very good question. That's why I was just saying, like, maybe that's also bullshit because I don't know what that is. It's a feeling, or it's a, what makes someone, for example, that makes it's specifically in noise or experimental music or minimal music or whatever. Like if you hear a tone, something very long, like what does that make that one person do it better than the other one? It's a very it's a feeling. I think it's not which it sounds like utter bullshit. I know, but it's really a feeling of how you do things. Yeah, or like why is Dan Flavin when he puts a light tube in the corner in a certain way? Why is that like so great compared to some other guy that uses neon or whatever? It makes it. It's because it's a story. It's because it's a total.
What's behind
Because he's
it?
a total artist. That makes it part, and that one work is a part of a total practice or something.
So you think like the continuity will play a role, like the fact that
Oh, I think
someone is
continuity
doing-
always plays a role. Yeah, if someone is obsessively busy with something, you at some point have to think like, okay, this guy or this girl or this whatever, it really believes that. Believes in this, so maybe let's have a look at it. You know, it can be an interesting, but there's a lot to check, and that's really gold somehow.
Yeah, that's really interesting because it's always said that art is about feelings. So there's
Feelings?
about like emotions.
Oh, feelings. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah,
I thought you
sorry.
said fillings, like your teeth, the silver in your teeth.
Well, that will be a weird art.
Yeah, art is about fillings or filling up a wall. That's also possible. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, about
Everything is
feelings.
art.
Yeah, possibly. I really don't. I really don't want to be busy or care about the question what art is, because that's really one of the most. Whatever
Yes.
whatever someone decides it is, I don't really care.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Maybe
So-
some music?
Yeah. Let's take a small music break.
Yeah, sounds good.
And then we'll come
This
back.
is Low Life. It's an Australian band, quite new.
Testosterone, masculine men are running the show. Nothing too down or nothing too heavy. Trying to be a good man, to be a good bloke, but I love getting off and I'm fucking stoked. No matter the deal, no matter the score. Three big men doing three strong things. Lots of little women doing lots of little things. Three big men doing three strong things. Doing our best at spreading our seed. Three big men doing three strong things. Lots of little women doing lots of little things. Three big men doing three strong things. Doing our best at spreading our seed. Keeping it simple, keeping it dark. Bricks and stones and real fast cars. Meat and bread, pussy and hate. Oh, we are men, and we hate facts. Us in truckies and us in dads. I need to pump, I need to spray. Testosterone, testosterone. Masculine men are running the show. Nothing too down or nothing too heavy. Three big men doing three strong things. lots of little women doing lots of little things. Three big men doing three strong things, doing our best and spreading our seed. Three big men doing three strong things, lots of little women doing lots of little things. Three big men doing three strong things, doing our best and spreading our seed. DNA.
Sorry, I'm lost for words.
We are wordless.
Wormless.
Wordless.
Wordless, yes. Speechless.
Yeah, speechless.
So what actually I wanted to ask you, I saw on YouTube when I did like a Google search, a video of, I think it was you in a classroom, and on the blackboard there was written mosselen,
Oh yeah,
and it was
okay.
like a verb or a conjugation, but I couldn't find any meaning or explanation. So I was wondering,
Well,
could you
there-
tell me what that is about?
No, I think it's for you to interpret.
Oh, really?
Personally, yeah, it's a video that I did to teach a class of 6-year-olds the word mosselen as a verb. So yeah, they just kind of copied me, but I didn't explain what it could be. It could be a lot of things. It's like let's say you know the Smurfs.
Yes.
It's like it's a bit like
Oh.
it's a bit like the Smurfs. You know the Smurfs. They also developed a language where like they said like, oh, let's smurf this, or oh yeah, maybe we should first smurf that, or
Yes.
smurf the microphone. I don't know what smurfing the microphone means, but in that sense, smurfing is actually everything. It's the same with mosselen in that
So
sense.
we could muscle the microphone.
You could
and-
muscle the microphone, but I wouldn't suggest that.
Just a quick question.
I
for the
wouldn't
ones
suggest that
are-
when I'm still here.
Just a quick question for the ones that are not that speakers. What's the meaning of mosselen?
Oh, how do you dress it?
Mussels?
Mussels? Yes,
Yeah.
it's
Mussels?
like
Okay.
oysters, but like black and
Clams?
silver.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
Ah,
yeah.
okay.
Oh,
nice,
clams is
mussels.
something
Clams,
else. Huh?
yeah.
But it's
Yeah, I think it's
a
mussels. I think that the
mussels. It's
I think it will be the translation
yeah.
for that. Okay, nice.
Interesting.
So, do you use often the social networks like YouTube or Facebook to?
We thought it was I thought it was funny in this case to do it because you could see it as an educational video. So I thought it was funny to be able to reach more people this way. If a video is only shown in a gallery, for example, which I also sometimes or could do, or in a museum, you reach a different audience, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
I like also the idea of that there's no limitation in reaching in reaching out or something. That everything is for it's possible. Also, something I really liked about the FM situation is that you're scrolling around. Maybe someone's scrolling around and all of a sudden ends up at Centraal and it thinks like, what the hell is this? That the possibility of ending up there. It's similar to I don't know if it's not translated as zapping, for sure not, but zappen
yes, like
is
clicking through channels.
clicking through
like on
channels.
the
I don't know what
TV.
you would say about it in English, but it's a similar thing. You can end up in weird places.
Like you can
and
do
I
on
like that.
YouTube, you can keep clicking on recommended videos, and sometimes
Yeah, but
you
that's
end up in, like,
I think that's different because it suggests
yeah,
suggests
the algorithm,
stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like it thinks. I think that's actually more creepy because it actually it's kind of like suggesting what you would like. I think that's
Yeah.
very.
Yeah.
I prefer that you don't know where you end
Oh,
up.
like there would be like a random button.
Yeah, that would be
like
good.
random
But also,
video.
like, can you trust Google and YouTube and all
Yeah.
these places? I actually don't think so.
No, probably not.
No.
Okay, so for you, is it important? Do you think a lot about how many people are you going to reach, or?
In the radio show.
Yeah.
No, but I remember there was a button at some point on the computer. It's not there anymore on this one, at least, where you could see how many people listened online.
Oh.
And I remember checking that, but I also never really. No, since it's like in that closet there, I never looked at it again.
Okay.
No, I don't really think about it. I think it's a funny. The ephemer. The vlucht.
Ephemerals, like
Ephemeral. Sorry, the ephemeral character of radio, or the suggestive character of radio, are two things that I find very interesting about it. it's gone after I well, you can sometimes listen again if you put it on a podcast or something like that, but otherwise it was only there for that 1 hour.
Okay.
And I like that idea. Or maybe you record it and you keep it and you can keep listening to yourself at home, but that's also very kind of strange. So I don't really. No, I like that part of it, and I like the coincidental part a lot about this. I don't really. I think it's funny how it can also live in that. Like, did you hear this or that? If I heard a really good radio show, like, I think it's funny, like to say it to the person. But it's very possible that you did something that you thought was really good, and then like nobody maybe heard it, and I think that's also very interesting.
Do you often get feedback or not on your radio show?
If I put the microphones too loud, sorry, that was a very bad joke. No, actually, that was very bad. I'm really sorry.
No.
It's kind of a bar situation. No, yeah, sometimes there's a bunch of people that if I would, for example, go out, let's say the same evening or something, and I meet people that listen to it, people would say something maybe, but sometimes also not at all. It's also fine, yeah.
You won't lose any sleep over it.
No, not at all, not at all. Quite the opposite. I also forget what I do there, which is because it's very much in a improvised babble, let's say, and it's like people. I remember like someone would come up to me like like say something funny and repeat something that I did in the show, and I was looking at them like, huh, what is this about? Like, so I didn't really remember or something. It's a very
Interesting, yeah.
Okay, that's very, very interesting.
I don't know about that.
I think it is.
So yeah.
Are you planning to your radio show here is actually only about the radio? Is interviewing people from the radio only? Okay.
We only had this is our last episode, our second
last.
and our last actually, yes.
Oh, your second and your last.
Yes.
Why?
Because our deadline for our research project is in 2 weeks.
Oh, okay.
So sadly, we don't have time to interview more people. But
that's too bad. Okay. So so last week you interviewed Bert Lezy.
Yes.
How did you end up with me and Bert then? That's really a strange choice in a way.
By chance, we were here
randomly.
with a meeting with Daniel on a Wednesday evening, and then Bert was broadcasting here, and that's how we met him. And I think it was through Redactietijd that we heard about you.
Okay, yeah.
And then we got your contact information and we emailed you.
Daniel would actually have been very interesting, especially about the history of the radio, because he's actually the person that has the biggest archive of the radio. I mean, not only recordings maybe, but especially a lot of paperwork. He was also the secretary of the radio for years, so he's definitely was an interesting. If you need more information, I would suggest to contact him.
Yeah, we might do that.
Yeah. It will be.
Thank you for the suggestion.
No worries.
So we're almost out of time. I think maybe we can play one last record.
Yeah, I've put one on there by Still Up Stepa. It's a Icelandic artist collective, or they're a bunch of Icelandic visual artists that started making music in around '94. Made a lot of records, but also it started as a punk band, experimental punk band. And became very, very involved in sound art and recording techniques, etc. They're quite an interesting band, Icelandic.
So that's it for our interview and for our
Okay.
last show.
Mhm.
Thank you very much, Dennis,
No worries.
for coming here. We are really grateful.
And we want to thank also, well, our crew of technical staff, Boma and Ruben, for being here.
Thank you.
Don't forget about them. And to Radio Central for letting us broadcast during this time. It has been a pleasure being here, and we really appreciate the opportunity of just
We should just propose a new radio show.
Yeah, maybe we should.
interviewing people.
But something
the sound of living.
something that absolutely baffles me is that there's hardly any women on this station.
Oh, really?
Well,
Oh.
I don't think it's a typical male thing to be a radio host or something. But
Mhm.
somehow, since the beginning days, it's something that I've also been. It's been very clear. Also, being busy with this book,
Uh-huh.
that also since the early days, there's hardly women. It's so
Wow,
surprising to
yeah.
me.
Okay, we
So
need
maybe
to
we-
fix this.
yes.
I think if you're interested in it, you should propose something. Well, you should do whatever you
You
want.
might do
obviously.
it.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, that's it. That's
That's it.
all for today, and thank you very much.
Yes.
That was the sound of living.